Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto was neglected by Kakashi but trained by Jiraiya, Kurenai, Guy, and Ebisu. Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now start the fanfic. Let's make one thing perfectly clear, I do not rape women. Is that clear? Naruto growled out and Kin mutely nodded her head before Naruto let her go. Good. As for your torture, don't worry, neither myself or anyone else is going to lay a finger on you while I'm interrogating, but you'll still be enjoying it. Naruto stated, making her frown in confusion before Naruto took the cloth off the tray. Those are my bells. Kin exclaimed in shock while seeing there was something else on them that looked like weird scribbled lines. Correction, they were your bells. After examining them and then working out how they operate, I had 2 teachers of mine help me change them to suit the need I have. Naruto stated as he took the bells attached to Senbon and stabbed them at different spots in the chair before sitting and showing he had ninja wire connected to the bells in his fingers. So what, you're going to put me in a pain illusion? Kin asked, not seeing what the big deal is. Naruto's reply was merely to smirk before he flexed his fingers, causing the bells to jingle. Immediately, Kin jolted in the chair with a squeal as her panties got wet and her nipples hardened. Anko and Ibiki were both surprised at the reaction since they didn't know what Naruto had planned, just that he did in fact have a plan. What was that? Kin panted as her whole body was hit with a wave of pleasure the moment she heard the bells ring. Oh, with the help of my teachers, I reverse the effects of your bells. Instead of pain, they give pleasure by taking some of my chakra and sending it to your brain via sound waves. It's only hitting you even harder since it turns out, my chakra is actually a body stimulant close to that of an aphrodisiac, so it has even greater effects on women. Naruto stated as he jingled them again, making Kin release a long moan, and depending how hard I make them jingle in the order, then the various levels of pleasure you receive. Naruto stated as he jingled them again. And how is this torture? Kin asked, panting with a blush on her face. Simple, the bells are also wired so that no matter how much pleasure they give, you'll never be allowed release. Naruto stated, smiling as Kin looked at him in horror. Yup, I can give you as much pleasure as possible, but that not an itch you feel will never go away. Stuck in a perpetual aroused state with no hope of achieving orgasm. Naruto stated, making Kin pale considerably. You bastard, she started before moaning again as Naruto moved the bells. Also, before you go thinking that I'll be affected, the bells have a range limiter applied to them. Nothing outside of a foot radius is affected by them. Meaning I can sit here all day relaxing as the bells ring and you get pushed to the edge of orgasm, but never able to achieve it. Naruto stated as he jingled the bells another 3 times. On the outside, both Ibiki and Anko were shocked at the plan Naruto had created, since both male and female prisoners could be affected by that trick. Kid's going to make our jobs easier than before. Can't wait to see what he cooks up later. Ibiki stated, making Anko nod. Said woman was also in a daze, thinking of the other uses for those bells, specifically the bedroom uses. Whether on the receiving end or not, those bells could be a lot of fun. She also made a note to ask where he got the idea from. After about 5 minutes, Kin was a panting mess. Her panties were completely soaked and her nipples felt like they'd tear through her bra at any second. It didn't help that, whether it was intentional or not, the bells were making her mind picture Naruto actually touching her and making her feel the pleasure. What she didn't know was that the bells weren't doing that at all. It was her own mind doing that, both because she wouldn't mind and because it was trying to justify the pleasure it was receiving. Naruto then stood and walked over to a few water bottles and brought one over. After opening it and taking a drink, he then offered it to Kin, who gladly took several drinks. She knew at the rate her nether regions were going that she was going to be dehydrated soon. Naruto then removed the bottle and capped it, letting Kin take some breaths. Are you ready to talk? Because I can keep doing this for hours. Naruto stated, getting Kin to whimper. Please, no more. I'll talk, just please let me come. Kin pleaded, since she couldn't fathom suffering this for hours when her body was already in this bad a shape after only minutes. Tell me everything and then I'll let you. Naruto stated, making Kin whimper before she started telling him everything, with Ibiki and Anko taking it down in detail. Once she was done, Naruto nodded and then jingled the bells differently than he had before. The effect was instant as Kin threw her head back and squealed loudly as she came harder than she ever had before in her life, causing her to soak her seat in her underwear. Kin hunched over, gasping and panting from the experience. She almost felt like she was floating during the experience, as it was that pleasurable and satisfying. Well then, besides someone coming in to verify the information you gave us, we're done here. Naruto stated as he stood to leave. Wait, Kin asked breathlessly, making Naruto pause. Please, take me as your slave. She asked, making Naruto stiffen and the 2 senior interrogators to raise their eyebrows in surprise. I know what awaits me, death or imprisonment in an unimaginable hell. I don't want that. The pleasure the bells gave me, my mind saw it as it all coming from you and made up various scenarios for it. Please, I'd rather have the pleasure than the pain, and I've already betrayed my village entirely. Kin stated in a desperate tone as her body wanted a full release instead of just a sensational one. Naruto was silent a long moment before he answered, I can't promise anything, I don't know the laws and procedures concerning this and I believe the Hokage has a say in it. If it is possible, then I will do it so long as you actually want it to happen and not just because you're in a haze of lust and pleasure. Naruto stated as he looked back at her before heading for the door. Thank you, Master. Kin stated as Naruto left and found Ibiki and Anko there waiting for him. Naruto merely looked at Ibiki as they walked to deliver their reports to the Hokage. She's not wrong in the fact all that awaits her is a cell in a prison or execution since she not only joined a traitor's village but also helped a plan to invade the village. While not common nowadays, captured ninja have become slaves either to the ruling authorities or the one who broke them. It was usually used for captured ninja that had bloodlines, a unique skill or trait, or considered extremely talented that offspring from them would benefit the village should they have any. Especially if their owner had a bloodline as well since that increased the chances of a new bloodline or a child with both. Normally the Hokage has the final say, but usually they allow it for the person that broke them unless a lord or lady requested the person be their slave. Ibiki explained since it was true and Naruto merely nodded. I see, well if the Hokage gives permission then I will offer her the chance when her mind is clearer than it was in there. I don't want to take her in and then have her resent me because it wasn't what she honestly wanted. Naruto stated as he'd take her in if she wanted, but he sure as wasn't going to exploit, force, or use her in any way. He wasn't like Zabuza seeing someone as a tool until they managed to prove themselves enough and he sure as wasn't going to be like Gato. That's respectable kid, just make sure your enemies don't always know that or they may try to take advantage. Ibiki stated since a person could have honor and respect, but you can't let it be the leading forces when in battle since in their world the only thing that mattered was you won and lived and your enemies lost and died. Granted there were exceptions since capturing enemies for information, bounties, hostage exchanges, double agents, spies, etc. were always a good thing to have. They were more key in wartime, but having them in times of peace meant there was a chance of preventing war. Ibiki broke from his musings as Naruto nodded, I know, Ibiki-sensei. Naruto stated making Ibiki nod as they walked before Anko chimed in. By the way kid, where did you come up with that torture for Kin? Anko asked and Naruto chuckled slightly while scratching the back of his head. I had help from Jiraiya-sensei and Kurenai-sensei. I had the idea when I heard some women complaining that their partners were torturing them by never letting them finish. I hadn't fully understood what they meant until later, but I figured it out and then asked Jiraiya and Kurenai for help in making the bells able to do that for the genjutsu 2 days ago. Jiraiya made seals and Kurenai helped figure it out for genjutsu related thus the final product. Naruto stated making them blink a bit since it was an ingenious way to use the genjutsu since it was bulked up by the seals. Okay, just one more thing, any chance I could get my own set to play with? Anko stated then asked with a grin making Naruto and Ibiki sweat drop. I guess, I'd need Jiraiya to make another batch of the bells though. Naruto stated making Anko grin as they entered the office seeing Hiruzen and Jiraiya there. The three then lost all relaxation and faced the Hokage seriously, sir, we have a serious problem. Ibiki stated before they gave the three detailed reports on the matter at hand as well as the situation Naruto just found himself in. By the end of it, Hiruzen looked and felt a decade older, I'm seriously getting way too old for this shit. Hiruzen stated getting chuckles from the others. You could always hand the hat over to me now, Gramps. Naruto stated with a grin making Hiruzen chuckle. Sorry Naruto, while you are indeed improving and getting closer to that goal, you are still a ways off from getting the hat. Hiruzen stated making Naruto pout slightly getting more chuckles from the group. Hiruzen then straightened himself and grew serious, regardless, I want all Anbu recalled to the village and heavier patrols. I also will want extra members disguised around the nobles and civilians. Jiraiya, the snake summons will be your primary concern. Hiruzen ordered going into full Hokage mode. Jiraiya nodded, got it, but I'd also like to enlist Naruto and his clones in setting up a trap field outside and inside the village. The kid nearly took my head and my arm when I tested him in trap making and I can only imagine what he'll do if we give him better supplies. Jiraiya stated making them raise an eyebrow and look at Naruto. Hehe, my pranks kind of gave me an in-depth knowledge of wires, subtlety, intricacy, and layers of attacks. Naruto chuckled slightly whole scratching the back of his head. Very well, Naruto you will have a few days before the finals to set up the outside traps. The inner traps will have to be done during the finals when we can have those not attending moved away from any potential fighting. Jiraiya you work with him on the layouts since we can have our forces lead the enemy into the traps as well as know how to avoid them. Hiruzen stated making the two nod before more specifics were discussed. 4 days later, 14th day. Naruto quickly moved his weapon to parry the attack aimed at him by his sparring partner and then quickly pressed the attack back pushing it into a deadlock. Said opponent was a beautiful woman with purple hair and rust-colored eyes. This was Yugao Azuki, Anbu squad leader and swordswoman of the village and Naruto's sword trainer. While Jiraiya was away, he had stopped in Wave Country and heard about what Naruto had done. However, he also knew about certain traditions and rules the seven swordsmen lived under. With that in mind, he explained some things to the people of Wave and they gladly helped move the two graves to within Wave's borders and had two proper headstones crafted and put in place while Jiraiya took the sword to give to Naruto. It was in the written report by Sakura, Tazuna, Kakashi, and Naruto himself that Zabuza stated Naruto had beaten him regardless of if Kakashi had wounded him or Gado's thugs had killed him. Because of this, under tradition and code followed by the seven swordsmen, the Kubikiribocho belonged to Naruto now. Naruto had objected at first until Jiraiya informed him of the traditions and the fact that someone at any time could just walk up and take the blade. Meaning that Zabuza's blade could end up in the hands of someone who wouldn't respect it like it deserved. Naruto had relented at that and began practicing with it while Jiraiya worked on something to help giving him more options in a fight. Which partly led to the current situation as Jiraiya has had a seal engraved into the blade to allow it to shift in size. It could be its large and intimidating Zanbato appearance or it could shift down to the length of a katana or even further to that of a knife. This was for practicality as well as usage since if Naruto was in a tight corridor or in close proximity to allies then the sword would be near useless, but if it could change size then he could use it regardless of the setting or situation. The one thing Naruto had requested with the seal was that the weight of it wouldn't change unless he put some chakra into it. He didn't want to risk losing it while in the short version to an enemy, but if the shortened blade still weighed the same then it would be hard for an enemy to steal it. Plus the added bonus of swinging it while light then increasing the weight upon contact would be hard to match and fight off. Which now leads us to here and now with Naruto training, sparring against Yugao when she wasn't on duty. Yugao had been happy to train Naruto since few ninja had a weapon of their own let alone took up the sword. She also hadn't had an apprentice before and from the reports the Hokage was getting, she wasn't sure if there was someone better than Naruto to have as an apprentice. The first day she had him perform stances and basic swings before having him do them over and over again till he could do them on near reflex, which wasn't hard because of the shadow clones. After that she started helping him with more advanced attacks and forms leading up to now with them clashing blades on near equal ground. It was nearly equal since Naruto had the strength and speed, but Yugao had the experience, finesse, and mastery of the weapon on her side. As usual though, the battle was proving to be too close for either to get a significant advantage over the other. Yugao could handle his attacks better, but Naruto could power through hers making them nearly evenly matched since Naruto still had stamina to spare while Yugao would get winded soon. The two finally called it a draw and sat down taking a breather. You've improved a lot Naruto, to think less than a week ago you could barely handle the sword and now you're fighting me to near equal ground. Yugao stated though there was more pride than jealousy since Naruto was essentially putting years of hard work into his training through the shadow clones. He just happened to get the payoff faster than people normally did. Thanks Yugao-sensei. That means a lot, but I couldn't have done it without you. Naruto stated knowing that it could sting someone's pride a bit to see someone younger rising to their level quickly, but the fact that said person was their student helped ease the blow. How goes your other training? With the event coming up I haven't had as much time to hear about it. Yugao asked knowing they weren't supposed to mention the invasion and only call it the event, knowing people would think it was the Chunin exam finals. It's going good. I'm working on cutting water with my wind now under Asuma sensei's teachings while he also has had me start working on making a cutting edge over weapons. He's also been helping me with strategy and planning by having me play against Shikamaru more. Guy sensei says I'm progressing well with the Ichani fighting style and should be able to start the basics of Wing Chun soon. Kurenai sensei has helped me get my chakra under much better control while also helping me with breaking from genjutsu and we're trying to find a genjutsu that could fit me better since the basic illusions are still being overloaded when I try them. Ibiki sensei has been helping me grow my knowledge base while also teaching me how to get information both directly and subtly. Anko sensei has been helping me improve my agility, aim, and knowledge of points to hit for pain, death, or incapacitation as well as escaping traps. Jiraiya sensei has been helping me with strength, speed, sealing, control, patience, and ninjutsu. Naruto stated since it meant a lot that he was getting help from so many people to make him into a better shinobi. Yugao smiled. Well, you'll be making quite the impression during the finals then, won't you? She asked and he grinned and nodded before they started working again. 1 week later, 21st day of training. Naruto could honestly say the past week could only best be described as busy as he hadn't done much else besides sleep, eat, plan his traps, and train as much as he could. If one of his teachers wasn't available due to preparation for the finals invasion, then he was refining the different areas further and trying to expand on others. Today though was different. Jiraiya had informed him that he had something special planned and it wasn't toad summoning. Naruto had done toad summoning 3 days prior and got to know a few of the toads before summoning the boss toad Gamabunta. It took some talking but Naruto convinced the boss to let him summon the clan on the condition that if he made Chunin then he had to share a drink with Gamabunta. Since then Naruto had been summoning the various toads but he had summoned Gamakichi and Gamatatsu, the sons of Gamabunta, the most since they were actually around his age and was bonding and working with them the most. Now though he was standing before Jiraiya, who had 3 bags next to him filled with different balls while a bunch of Naruto's clones were working on sealing arts. Alright, now that your control is better and you have some jutsu, I think it's time you learned a technique that my best student created, the Rasengan. Jiraiya stated before forming said ball of energy in his hand, making Naruto look at it analytically. If he had been shown that move before Ibiki began helping him, then Naruto probably would have gone starry-eyed before jumping around asking to learn it. Now though, he was studying it and seeing what he could, which at the moment was chakra swirling and battling itself while contained in the ball shape. Jiraiya smiled seeing Naruto taking the time to analyze the jutsu when shown to see if there were any secrets to be gained from it. It was leaps and bounds beyond how he was 3 weeks ago. Now, this jutsu is a close combat in your face type of jutsu. Jiraiya stated as he slammed the ball into a boulder, destroying it into small pebbles. Naruto merely raised his eyebrows in surprise as Jiraiya turned to face him. Alright, now the first step is rotation. He stated, handing Naruto a water balloon. Your job is to rotate the water to the point that the balloon bursts. Jiraiya stated, taking his own balloon, causing it to instantly explode. Naruto frowned before he held his balloon and focused, causing the balloon to shake and bubble slightly before a couple minutes later the balloon burst. Jiraiya was actually surprised as it took him 3 days to get the first step done, but he also knew that Naruto had way more chakra than he did, so the force wasn't that hard to create for him. Good job, you're doing it much faster than I or my previous student did. Now I want you to keep doing it until you can do it nearly instantly, since your opponent could take advantage of the time it takes you to make the jutsu regardless of how little time it is. So the shorter time the better, since it will give your opponent less time to react. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto nod before he sat down and took the bag of water balloons and got to work. An hour later had Naruto bursting the balloon at 1 second of activating the chakra, which Jiraiya told him was the best they could hope for since it was actually faster than that. The reason being is that it took Naruto a 1/4 second to think to do it, 1/4 to actually do it, 1/4 for Jiraiya to perceive him doing it, and finally 1/4 for Jiraiya to react to it. So in reality, Naruto was getting it done in about half a second despite them not being able to track it faster. Good job Naruto, now the next step is power. Jiraiya stated as he took a rubber ball and caused it to burst loudly. This rubber is stronger than the balloons and there's no water to churn and help burst it. Jiraiya stated, handing one to Naruto, who quickly made it pop on one side. I figured this would be a bit easier for you than it was for me, but that's only because you have so much chakra and you're getting the control over it. However, you still have to keep working on it till the whole ball bursts, not just gains a hole. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto nod before he took another and started again. This time he took longer, letting the chakra build up before releasing the control, making the ball burst into pieces. Better, but you can't take the time to build up the power, so keep going. Jiraiya stated as he went to check on the clones' work. Naruto could have used his clones to do this much faster, but when it came to jutsu, he wanted to be able to perform it first before using clones to refine it better. While it may seem naive or silly, Naruto wanted to get control of the jutsu himself rather than let the clones do it. He enjoyed learning and mastering the intricacies of jutsu and using them, and the clones would shorten that. Thus, it took another 4 hours to finally get the ball to explode quickly, and Jiraiya gave Naruto the third step, one of the balloons from step 1 but this time full of air. Step 1 was rotation, step 2 was power, and now step 3 is control. You'll be creating the spiraling and power in the balloon, but you must do it without the balloon bursting, since it means you'll have the sphere going and contained in your hand. This was the hardest step for both me and my student. The way you're progressing should indicate that you'll have it at least close to ready by the end of the day. You'll know you've succeeded when the balloon is shredded while the ball of chakra is still in your hand. Jiraiya stated confidently, making Naruto smile since he enjoyed having a teacher that was confident in his skills and immediately got to work. Just a bit of warning, if the balloon pops, the chakra contained within will be freed and cause a bit of a violent reaction. Jiraiya stated, making Naruto nod as he decided to take it slow. He did it with the others and got the basic concept down before working on decreasing the time it took him to do it. This proved to be the correct course of action, as is 3 hours, and 1 exploding balloon. Later had Naruto holding the ball of energy with the balloon shredding off of it. Well, that's step 3, now I just gotta do it faster. Naruto mumbled to himself as he took another balloon and began the process again, intent to have the jutsu mastered before the day was done. 10 days later, final day of training before the finals. Naruto sat in a small courtyard meditating in perfect stillness as 2 of the toads and Jiraiya had instructed. Said 2 toads were Shima and Fukasaku, and they wanted him to learn this as it would help with training he would undergo later on when he was stronger. At the time he was slightly annoyed since his Uzumaki instincts despised sitting still for too long, but he was able to slowly get the time build up to where he could go hours without even twitching a muscle, which had the added bonus of building his patience. The side benefit was also the fact that Jiraiya informed him that meditation could help replace sleep as the mind could relax along with the body, but your awareness remained, letting you be able to react quickly while feeling rested. At the moment, he had a small army of clones outside the village setting up all of his traps while each of his teachers was with a regiment of clones making refinements, corrections, or adding something new to help with his training for the future. Jiraiya had put him through the ringer the past month helping his taijutsu, sealing, control, physical training, jutsu, summoning, patience, meditation, speed, agility, and other areas pushing him further and further. The Rasengan was by far the best jutsu, in Naruto's opinion, and he had mastered it within a day before he started having his clones working on making it with both hands at the same time since if he missed with one then he could hit with the other. Jiraiya had also helped him begin working on his other affinities and Naruto surprised him by making a jutsu for his lightning affinity. The other surprise came in his seals. Not only was he wearing over 500 pounds on each limb and his waist, but he also had the gravity set to 10 times normal. Even with that, he could still move at high Jonin speed when relaxed and Anbu speed when he actually put effort into moving as fast as he could. The toads had helped with control, water release, patience, swordsmanship, staff combat, collaboration jutsu, and taijutsu in the form of the frog kata. However, the latter he was informed couldn't be used to its fullest until later on when he had the training that would be used with meditation and the control he needed. Regardless, even without the training, the frog kata was still dangerous to be hit with. Especially when Naruto worked it into his current styles of combat making him much more lethal in hand-to-hand combat. Kurenai had helped him with control, some mid to high level genjutsu that he could fully control, noticing signs of seduction, and even making a genjutsu, though he had yet to show her the finished product. He had in turn helped her improve her taijutsu both to help her and as thanks for everything she had done. Kurenai had thanked him and given him a kiss on the cheek as well. Anko had helped with his accuracy as well as learning to throw Senbon with deadly or incapacitating accuracy. She also covered points to cause pain, death, and incapacitation while helping with his agility, flexibility, and taijutsu. She also showed her own brand of torture techniques and traps, which Naruto took note of to add to his already impressive repertoire of trap makings. With Asuma, he had gotten his wind affinity under control and had made progress to fully mastering it. Naruto had mastered the trenching knives and Asuma had even surprised him by giving him a unique set that were a little wider and had spikes along the hand guard. Thus they were as much a punching weapon as they were a stabbing and slashing weapon. They were even more versatile as they had a small knife point on top of them as a way to block and stab. Naruto and Shikamaru also benefited from playing each other as they both grew as strategists as well as planning and adapting. Ibiki had made him into an excellent psychoanalyst as well as interrogator that was second only to Ibiki in the ways of torturing the prisoner without physical contact. Ibiki had helped him block out annoyances, taunts, emotions, and anything else that could get in the way during battle and how to deal with the aftermath once it was done. He had also helped heal some of the psychological wounds Naruto had suffered at the hands of the village since one could only be treated as a nuisance, less than human, something that shouldn't be in the village, or as a threat while being glared at constantly without having some form of wounds to you both psychologically and emotionally. It had actually made Ibiki want to drag half the village in and see how they liked psychological trauma being done to them and not being able to do anything about it. Anyway, Ibiki had also helped him with his method of taking pain and blocking it out, which was actually helping him with some of his taijutsu trainings since Guy found another taijutsu that would fit him. Speaking of which, Guy had been happy and excited to train Naruto so extensively since outside of Lee, he hadn't really trained anyone in taijutsu. Naruto had mastered the Ichani style and had gained the experience to use it through his clones fighting him, more clones, and Guy. Another style that Guy had stated he'd help Naruto with in addition to the strong fist was the iron body style which was designed for taking hits and lasting through them regardless of how damaging they'd be on others or even resisting damage altogether. It also focused on powerful strikes that could drop an opponent with one hit. In addition to that, through the Ichani style, he had learned parts of the Wing Chun and had used scrolls provided by Guy to fill in the gaps and was even learning weapons for the two styles. His Ichani training came with staff combat, which helped him with the toads since he learned to use a Sasumata staff from them. He preferred the small pitchfork trident head than the hammerhead or the wide fork style that was used for pinning pushing. It also had the benefit of being made from a kanabo so even if he couldn't hit with the head, the shaft would hurt like hell if not kill. It even had a holder ring at the end to allow for increased range and swinging power. Wing Chun also had bow staff combat, but the harder weapon were the butterfly swords. The swords weren't much bigger than the trenching knives but the thing about them was they could be sheathed together making it look like one knife blade. The problem with butterfly swords was that they required complete awareness of your body and the blades at all times and then incredible speed to move and attack while still using the Wing Chun principles with the blades. He had begun to get speed with them, but they weren't comfortable. Jiraiya had helped solve that problem by visiting a local weapon craftsman and making a pair but instead of the normal large bladed heads, they were a sleeker recurved version for better speed and control. Since the change, Naruto had gotten better with them and was fighting even more efficiently and progressing better. Even Jiraiya and Guy were impressed by what Naruto could do with the blades as he and his clones sparred to get a better handle on them. Even with the weights and gravity, Naruto could still move faster than a few could track with those blades. Speaking of blades, Yugao had turned Naruto into a truly accomplished swordsman to the point that Yugao was trying her hardest to keep up and at least match him. He had learned different moves for Yugao's style of sword fighting and was quickly getting the hang of the Kubikiribocho in its large form and its knife form. Naruto could also swing at the same speed regardless of the weight the blade had from the seal. This in turn made him dangerous and deadly regardless of the size and weight of the blade. Naruto broke from his reviewing as a voice reached him. "Naruto-sama, it's time for you to come home as you requested," Kin stated, standing in a modest maid outfit that showed off her figure and midriff, yet not so much that she'd look like a. She only wore it in private settings such as in their home or the walled-off yard around said home. Which was another thing. Naruto had gone to Kin 5 days after her interrogation and she still wanted to serve him over the alternative. So after filling out paperwork, Naruto had let Kin choose the methods to show how she would be shown as his slave servant. Apparently she not only had to have a seal upon her to ensure she never betrayed Naruto or Konoha, but she also had to have a physical marking to show that she belonged to Naruto. The choices were a collar choker, a seal tattoo visible, piercings with tags, or any combination of them. Kin chose a choker and belly button piercing, though Anko had talked her into piercings for her as well. Since then, he and Kin has been living in their new accommodations. Said accommodations were the old apartments Naruto lived in, but Hiruzen had bought the place, renovated it, and turned the entire top floor into a penthouse before giving the deed to Naruto under the direction of payment for 3S rank missions integral to village security and safety. Even put the Hokage seal on the paperwork to make it official and unbreakable. Meaning anyone with a problem with his ownership and living arrangements could take their problem and shove it up their asses since no one would listen. Kin had also helped him with training as she had told him about the different sound-based jutsu and attacks her village had. It had given him some ideas and had a series of clones begin experimenting on it with a few promising results. He'd still need to experiment a bit, but if the early showings were this promising in him, then he'd have some attacks that were unique to him and him alone. Shaking those thoughts away, Naruto stood and smiled at his roommate, servant, since Kin refused not to stay in the penthouse with him. "Thank you, Kin, let's head home. We've got a big day tomorrow," Naruto stated, making her smile and nod as the two walked back to the complex. Tomorrow, Naruto had a tournament and a war to win. And he'd ensure all of his opponents knew his wrath. Deep within Naruto, a certain fox watched with say that Konoha was bustling with activity would be an understatement. Shops were open early, having extra workers doing advertisements, showing off their different wares, and trying their best to get the wealthy visitors to stop in and purchase their wares at reasonable prices. Of course, as soon as the finals started, all those merchants and shopkeepers would be rounded up and taken to various shelters for the coming invasion. While the more knowledgeable highly doubted there would be many getting inside the walls after seeing the layout for Naruto's proverbial and literal minefield of traps, they still needed to be more safe than sorry. Said blonde had been careful to give the full layout of his traps and ensuring that dodging one meant you'd potentially set off 3 others if you didn't know where to move. Within the village itself, he ensured the traps were designed to inflict death and pain while not damaging the building themselves, though he did have a couple set up for capturing enemies since he knew information was vital. Outside was primarily the killing field, since with such large groups coming it would be ideal for area of effect traps. While there would be some capture incapacitation traps, the majority were killing traps. He was, however, very annoyed at various Konoha shinobi trying to mock him when he was detailing the different traps. Ibiki, Hiruzen, and Jiraiya had shut them up real quick with Kurenai, Anko, Asuma, Yugao, Guy, and even the Ino-Shika Cho trio backing them up. Inoichi had been at his wits' end, with Ino always complaining that training was too tiring and eating was going to ruin her figure to impress Sasuke. She was his princess and all, but she needed to take her status as heiress seriously or he'd have to consider possibly naming someone else as the next clan head. Then a little over 3 weeks ago, she had talked to her mother about how to balance any food she ate with training and had then begun to eat better and train more. She was even asking him for more training and etiquette for being clan head. When he asked what brought the change on, she had gained a small blush to her face, making him think Sasuke had done something to motivate her. Imagine his surprise when she told them it had actually been Naruto to motivate her to train and eat better, when he had pointed out health risks and that no Kunoichi was fat and had bodies that she had wanted to have. It made Inoichi happy that his blossoming little girl was taking this more seriously and was apparently shifting her attention to a better future boyfriend. Inoichi had nothing against the kid, quite the opposite. Sure, the pranks had both amused and annoyed him, but after talking with the boy, at Ibiki, Jiraiya, and the Hokage's request, he had seen what a kind-hearted and caring young man he was and had helped him with the trauma the village had caused, intentional or not. He hadn't liked Sasuke because not only was the boy arrogant and rude most of the time, though it had lessened recently, but Inoichi was still not sure he should be a shinobi given the fact Sasuke never had therapy following the attack by Itachi. From what he heard, not only had the boy found the dead bodies, but Itachi had also put him in a genjutsu that forced him to witness the killings firsthand. If that wasn't a sign for needed psychiatric counseling, then Inoichi wasn't sure what was. Still, Ino had been progressing well and wasn't as big a fangirl as she was before. He and his wife, Alia, really needed to find a way to thank Naruto for helping Ino out of being a fangirl and begin being a serious kunoichi. For Shikaku, he was usually only half listening at meetings, but when the words, Orochimaru, and, invasion, came up, he became wide awake and paying full attention. Upon seeing Naruto giving the detailed explanation and report concerning the traps, Shikaku had analyzed him too, since he had seen a change in Shikamaru becoming more and more clear as the days went by. Not only were his strategy skills improving, but he was also starting to play shogi in an unpredictable manner, making Shikaku struggle a bit to beat his son when they played. If he applied that same principle to his combat strategies, then his opponents would likely struggle to keep up. He'd also seen a fire in his son when it came to training that was rare for one of their clan members. When asked what caused it, Shikamaru had stated that Naruto had mentioned something during one of their games. Said something was that if Shikamaru ended up fighting someone who knew how to fight Nara clan members, then what did that leave Shikamaru? The answer, nothing but his wits and intelligence, which could be overwhelmed by a more skilled or greater in number opponent. Thus Naruto had pointed it out that not only could Shikamaru get himself killed, which was bad enough, but also get Ino, Choji, and Asuma killed. However, Naruto had informed him that there was a much worse possible fate for Ino if she were to be captured. As such, Shikamaru had stepped up his game, no pun intended, to get a wider variety of attacks and options when on the battlefield. Thus, despite it being a lot of work and a drag, Shikamaru had spent time learning more of his clan arts as well as starting elemental jutsu, with his element being lightning. Shikaku had been surprised at the turnaround, but had understood the drive behind it. Of course, Yoshino had loved it, claiming it came from her side of the family, and Naruto had merely found the right motivation to bring it out. Shikaku was just glad she was focused on their son trying harder and thanking Naruto than smacking Shikaku with her frying pan. Choza was similar to Shikaku, as Choji had come home one day and wanted to up his training. Choza, not seeing a problem with it, agreed and upped his training and was surprised to see how strongly he was going at it. Choza had gotten a similar explanation that Shikaku did, but with the addition that Naruto had explained to him that hurting those who threatened your home, families, and friends didn't make you a bad person, rather it put you in the right to harm that person for daring to threaten what you decided to protect. There were limits, of course, to how far one should go in certain situations, but the important thing was to be ready when those situations came up. Choji still didn't prefer to fight, which was understandable, but he wasn't going to hold back against an enemy anymore either. Choza and Chara, Choji's mother, were happy with that, since they didn't want Choji getting wounded or dying in the field because he wasn't willing to fight an opponent seriously. In short, the original Ino Shikacho were very much thankful and indebted to Naruto. Thus, they were going to back him up, especially when the Hokage and Jiraiya had such confidence in his skills. Said confidence and backing was rewarded as Naruto detailed the layout of his various traps both inside and outside the village should any enemy get inside and then flee. Those fleeing could be herded towards the traps after all. He then outlined which traps were activated by wires, which by seals, and which by a small pulse of chakra, as well as which traps were lethal, incapacitating, or capturing. By the end of it, all the hecklers had shut up and were amazed at the intricacies in the traps as well as the power in seals. The Anbu present were a little less surprised, at least by the traps, since they knew how good Naruto was with pranks, hiding, and outlasting pursuers. Naruto had stuck around to answer any questions before heading out so the various groups could memorize the layout and then get rid of the outline, since an enemy spy could find it and warn others. At the here and now though, we find various people, both from Konoha and not, filling the stadium to watch the fights. Well, the majority were, a good-sized chunk were there to either attack Konoha or ambush the attackers when the time was right. Among those there from Konoha were the different genin that didn't make it past the qualifiers and their Jonin senseis, minus Kakashi of course, and Kin, with all of them sitting together. When asked why Kin was sitting with them, the Jonin merely stated that she had decided to stay in Konoha and the Jonin were ensuring none of the drunker members of the village tried anything. Anyway, all of them were excited to see the fights, though Asuma and Anko had placed bets on Naruto winning the whole thing. It may have looked bad to bet against Shikamaru, but Asuma had placed a bet on Shikamaru winning his first match. He had done so mainly at Naruto's prodding, and since the kid had the devil's luck, Asuma decided to go with his advice. It wasn't that Asuma didn't have faith in Shikamaru, but you never did know when that lazy Nara tendency would kick in and make him decide it was too much work and then forfeit. Besides, both he and Shikamaru knew Shikamaru couldn't beat Naruto in a fight, especially when adding in the fact Naruto could fight everyone competing and still have enough chakra and stamina to spare for a match against a Jonin or three. Kurenai though was focusing on Neji Hyuga and was looking forward to the pain Naruto would cause him for nearly killing Hinata. He had even technically done it more than once, since the injury she sustained to her heart kept acting up afterwards, forcing her to remain in the hospital up until today. If it wasn't for the fact Hiyashi and his wife insisted that a doctor be in the room at all times to monitor her, Hinata could have died before help arrived. Even now, one of the best medical ninja in the village was sitting just behind them in case Hinata had any more issues. Her saving grace was the fact the Hokage had assured Kurenai that his third student, Tsunade Senju aka the greatest medical mind currently in the world, would be coming back to the village after the invasion. He would have sent for her earlier, but he didn't know if it could take a month or even longer, and with the threat of Orochimaru, he couldn't risk anyone capable of tracking and handling her being away. Kurenai had understood since she knew the village came before two genin, Hinata and Lee, regardless of the genin's status in the village. Guy was also anticipating the fight, both for his viewing and to show Lee what hard work counted for. He was lucky that the Hokage had given permission for Lee to be there, though he knew it was also due to Naruto requesting it as well. Like with Hinata, Naruto had wanted to show Lee what he was willing to do to anyone that dared to harm a comrade of his. Of course, Guy also had a bit of a grudge against Gaara, so he was looking forward to Naruto beating the boy, though he knew it wouldn't be as bad as Neji. Despite the seriousness that Naruto showed, Guy knew he couldn't hate Gaara that much just for the fact Jiraiya had informed him of Gaara's life. While Naruto had the emotional and psychological trauma of being hated and glared, Gaara had it intensified by constant assassination attempts that his own father condoned, and it was even worse when Gaara's own uncle tried to kill him. That had been the breaking point for Gaara's mind. As such, Naruto couldn't hate him as much since his village and father had turned him into what he was. Neji, however, was choosing to be like this. He was smart enough to realize that Hinata had no chance at all at defeating a Jonin-level opponent when she was only 3. Let alone a Jonin with years of experience and training. So yes, Neji was in some deeper shit than Gaara was, but Naruto fully intended to make them pay for their transgressions one way or the other. The Jonin broke from their musings as Sakura spoke up. Where are Naruto and Sasuke? If they don't get here soon, then they'll be cut from the finals. She stated, equally worried about her teammates. Asuma merely hummed while not having a cigarette today. Sasuke, I don't know, but knowing Kakashi they'll be late and Sasuke will get disqualified. He stated, making Sakura slump her head before he smirked. As for Naruto, hey, don't worry. He'll show up, he's got a lot to show and prove and he's not gonna miss a chance to do it. Asuma stayed, making the other Jonin smirk. You got that right, he's going to kick Neji's and any other opponent he faces. Anko stated with a grin, hoping to see the same brutal and cunning Naruto that had interrogated Zaku and planned out the traps. Yes, I don't think Naruto will have that much trouble against the opponents down there. Even Shino won't be able to keep up, I'm afraid. Kurenai stated, knowing Shino's insects would get full before even a quarter of Naruto's chakra was consumed. Yosh, Naruto will show off his blazing flames of youth against all his opponents. Guy exclaimed, clearly excited. The genin merely looked at the Jonin in confusion since they had blatantly stated that none of the contestants down there had a chance of defeating Naruto. Sensei, shouldn't you have more faith in Shino? Kiba asked in confusion, and Kurenai merely smiled. I have faith in Shino, I believe he can defeat his opponent and the next person he faces. However, I know for a fact he won't be able to defeat Naruto, he's too dependent on his bugs and such a thing is useless against Naruto. Kurenai stated, not looking from the arena floor. You mean because of his huge reserves, right? Shoji asked, making the other genin blink as Kurenai nodded. Huge reserves? What do you mean? His chakra pool can't be any greater than any of ours. Tenten stated, making the Jonin and a few other ninja nearby chuckle. Tenten, Naruto has more chakra than any of us including the Hokage. Guy stated, shocking the genin there. That's why he struggled so much in the academy. He couldn't do a normal clone because he was trying to strangle his chakra to the point he could make 1 or 2. If he had just let it flow and made as many as possible, then he would have passed easily. Guy stated, since he had heard how Naruto had the opposite problem that Lee did and the Hokage had taken it up with the different educators on just why no one thought to test Naruto or Lee on their chakra capacity to see if they could even attempt to do the standard graduation test. With Lee they made the excuse that they figured the boy just didn't like jutsu, but what pissed Hiruzen off was the so-called excuses about why not for Naruto, meaning he was lucky enough to even be in the academy, and some other borderline law-breaking remarks. Needless to say, Ibiki had some new clients after that discussion, and Hiruzen made it a new standard that they had to test the genin's chakra capacity every 6 months. No excuses. Guy broke from his musings at the sound of the genin gawking and chuckled to himself. It was a natural reaction to someone so young having more chakra than seasoned a Hokage, but still amusing to actually see. And it's for that exact reason that Shino can't defeat Naruto. By the time his bugs will drain enough to affect Naruto, he'll be in the middle actually fighting Naruto. Shino is smart and skilled, but he focuses on his bugs too much and leaves his body weak to close combat. There's also the fact he has no defense against jutsu. Kurenai stated, since after seeing Naruto broaden his skill set, she had begun to do the same and had encouraged Shino to do so as well. The quiet boy had asked what brought the subject up, and Kurenai had replied that she was helping another genin with genjutsu and had made her realize she overspecialized. She then hypothesized what would happen should she ever fight someone that was better in genjutsu or one of the few that could be immune to it. The answer was obvious: defeat followed shortly by death or capture. She then posed to him the question of what if he faced an opponent that had survived facing Aburame opponents before or that had too much chakra for his insects to feast on. Or faced an opponent like the Raikage who could coat his body in lightning. Again, the answer was obvious: defeat followed shortly by death or capture, with the first and third opponent likely resulting in his hive being harmed. Shino has taken the discussion to heart and began working to improve his taijutsu and strategy, as well as getting a second hive of insects to add more variety and versatility to his choices. Particularly a type immune to poisons and toxins that were harmful to other insects and even humans. She had told him to seek out Naruto after the finals for help, since if a Jonin wasn't available, then Naruto was the next best choice for helping him train. She broke from her thoughts as Sakura spoke again. How come you guys know about this? Sakura asked in confusion, and Anko grinned. Because we helped train the kid for the past month. Anko stated, grinning, making the genin look confused. Isn't that a conflict of interest? Hinata asked, and Asuma shook his head. No, we never talked with Naruto about what our respective student knew or were being trained in, and we never talked with them about what Naruto was training in or knew. Anko isn't in conflict since she's not the proctor for the third section. Besides, the Hokage signed off on it along with Naruto's new teacher. Asuma stated, since there was no point in hiding that fact. New teacher? Sakura asked in confusion. Yeah, Naruto, depending on how he does in the finals, is being taken as a private student to Jiraiya of the Sannin. He was very unhappy about Kakashi not properly teaching Naruto, since Jiraiya was friends with Naruto's parents. Both he and the Hokage were also very pissed at the fact Kakashi had decided to train Sasuke for the month while ditching you and Naruto. So depending on how Sasuke and Naruto do, will reflect what happens to Kakashi for his blatant negligence. Anko stated, knowing Kakashi was screwed beyond all measure. So what happens to Sasuke and I if Naruto is taken as a private student? Sakura asked while feeling a little conflicted about this. Well, you'll be put on the auxiliary roster until a third member for your team is available, unless the Hokage decides to send you with another team or Jiraiya has Naruto join your team for missions outside of D rank. Asuma stated, making Sakura frown in thought. If such a thing happens, I would start looking for ways to improve your skills and talents if Kakashi doesn't, and that's if Kakashi is still a sensei after the Hokage's punishment. Asuma stated, making Sakura nod slightly. Hehe, I'm sure quite a few of the genin will start expanding their arsenals after seeing what Naruto can do. Well, the smart ones will anyway. Anko stated, knowing that comment would make the genin watch Naruto's fight much more closely. Before anyone could say anything else, they had to turn their attention back to the arena floor as the proctor, named Genma, arrived and began the announcement for the start of the finals. Hiruzen, who had just welcomed the cage to the Hokage booth, stood and walked to the railing. Welcome everyone to the finals of the Chunin exams. Hiruzen stated, making many in the crowd cheer. I hope you all will be impressed with the skills and show that the new generation of shinobi will present. Let's begin. Hiruzen stated, making a good many cheer while he smirked at seeing Naruto just relaxing on the wall on the opposite side of the cage viewing platform. Alright, will everyone except Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please leave the arena floor? Genma called as Neji was left standing there smirking as if it was obvious that he was going to win. Naruto Uzumaki, please come down. Genma stated before there was a loud crash in the arena across from Neji. Everyone, minus Naruto's teachers, wondered what happened as the dust cloud hung around. When it cleared, everyone was surprised as they saw the new and improved Naruto. Over the last month, the extra nutrition had helped fend off some of the stunted growth he had, putting him at about 5 feet 10 inches. He was 5 feet 7 inches, which is the average height for a 15-year-old male. He stood there in a pair of black ninja pants with crimson stripes going down the outside of the legs and what looked like 2 kunai holsters on his legs, while his feet were in a pair of black boots that went up his calf and had his pants tucked into them. Around his waist was a crimson belt with several different pouches with a fox skull belt buckle that had glowing crimson eyes. There were also tassels, streamers, flaps hanging either from the belt or his pants. The position of the belt made it hard to tell, with the 2 right over his legs having a ball bearing the size of a smoke bomb at the end of them. The curious thing was that the others all had small bells on the end of them, yet they made no noise even as the wind blew them around. His hands were in fingerless gloves with a metal plate on the back, while his forearms were in a set of metal bracers with the Uzumaki swirl engraved on them. His torso was in a tight-fitting black bodysuit similar to Guy and Lee's spandex, only this was even more form-fitting, and looked good, as it showed Naruto's refined muscles. Over that, he wore a crimson Jonin-style flak jacket, only it had even more pockets and padding than a normal one, and still over that he wore a black hooded duster coat that was blowing in the wind, while the Uzumaki spiral was emblazoned on the back in crimson. If the hood was down, they'd see he also had his forehead protector on his, well, forehead. However, all that could be made out was his eyes shining within the hood and his mouth being expressionless. All in all, it was like night and day when comparing how he was now to how he was a month ago. All the males looked on in surprise while the women all blushed, whistled, drooled, shouted in glee, suppressed a nosebleed, or gawked at the appearance as his clothing showed off his muscles and body really well. Even Sakura and some of the married women were blushing at the sight of him. Genma merely smirked. "You cut it close, kid," Genma stated, and Naruto merely turned his head towards him before back to Neji. "I was here the entire time, I just didn't want to be down here where the air stinks," Naruto stated, confusing everyone before he continued. "Since everything that comes out of my opponent's mouth is a load of bullshit, the smell quickly becomes unbearable," Naruto stated, shocking many at him, cursing while Anko laughed and Neji glared heatedly. Then again, that could just be the stink of his fear. Naruto continued as he egged Neji on, making him more and more infuriated while Anko was just laughing in the stands. Genma merely snorted before he called the match to start and quickly jumped away as Naruto and Neji merely stared at each other. Well, Naruto stared since Neji was glaring at him. Before Neji could say anything, Naruto moved his arms, making Neji jump back and take his gentle fist stance. "Little jumpy, aren't we?" Naruto asked with a smirk as he removed his coat and then his vest, making many women in the stands whistle in appreciation since it let his upper body be displayed to them all. Poor Hinata was blushing red and had steam coming out of her ears, but she was endeavoring not to faint simply because her perverted side would not be denied the chance to see Naruto's body. Kurenai was blushing too while having a bit of drool as she imagined that body over her, pleasuring and taking her when she swore herself to him. It was making it a bit uncomfortable to sit there as her panties were getting wet. During the months she had bonded with Naruto and was actually seeing all the things Hinata found attractive in him, she honestly gained her own crush, growing infatuation with him. It only grew the more time they spent together, whether training, talking, eating, or just relaxing together during the month. Anko was just straight up eye-humping Naruto's form while drooling a bit. Sure, she had seen some of his improved body in training, but his training clothes were normally what remained of his jumpsuits and the like, which hid his body rather well. Now though, his body was practically on display with only the thin layer of fabric separating her from seeing his muscled body. Tamari was blushing while her mind couldn't comprehend the before and after images for the loudmouth she saw at the start of the exams. Holy shit, he's ripped. What the hell has Konoha been feeding him? Tamari thought, as the Naruto of a month ago didn't have that kind of body, at least that she saw since his clothes were baggy, and was wondering what the hell he did to gain it in such a short time. Kin was also blushing since she had seen her master come out of the shower a few times, though thankfully or perhaps regrettably she had only seen him without his shirt on. However, she had gotten some new doses of pleasure as Naruto, after her requests and endless begging, had given her massages that included her, and although Naruto had only used his hands and tongue so far, Kin had been a panting, quivering mess from the pleasure and had tried to return the favor, but had only been successful once. Said one time was when Naruto came home angry because he heard Hinata's injuries had been causing her to nearly flatline multiple times. Kin, seeing the frustration, decided to help and immediately pushed him on the couch before undoing his pants and giving him a blowjob. Said activity had lasted over 20 minutes before Naruto finally released and filled Kin's throat and mouth, which she swallowed before cleaning Naruto. Naruto had thanked her and she happily kissed his and told him, anytime. It wasn't that her master didn't want to give her pleasure and get as good as he gave, but for the month he wanted to stay focused on beating his opponents over bedroom fun. Kin had completely understood since she knew her master was rather protective of his comrades in village, and what Neji and Gaara had done was cross several lines that in Naruto's book you were never to cross. That didn't stop her from trying to seize another chance to relax her master if the opportunity presented itself though. Even if one hadn't presented itself yet. Back to the field, Naruto sealed his coat, vest, and bracers away before popping his neck audibly. Before Neji could react, Naruto began to fly through hand seals, making him go on edge and making the various ninja look on in surprise at the speed. After the 50th, or was it the 80th? Seal, Naruto spoke, ninja art, field of life. Naruto stated as he slammed his hands onto the ground, causing a yellow bubble to spread across and envelop the field. When it reached the wall and stopped, a couple of pulses began echoing through the bubble as Naruto stood there. Neji merely looked around in confusion as his Byakugan showed the field was covered in chakra, but nothing was happening to him, the field, or his opponent, so what was the point of this jutsu? Up in the stands, the Jonin and Genin were confused as well, as they hadn't heard of this jutsu before and the Jonin didn't recall Naruto ever mentioning this jutsu to them. Any idea what that jutsu does? Asuma asked, making his comrades shake their heads in the negative. No, Naruto mentioned he had something planned for Neji in their fight, but he wouldn't tell me anything other than it was going to let him keep a couple promises. Kurenai stated, knowing he had promised Hinata to win, promised her that Neji would suffer, and quite possibly promised Hiashi something as Jiraiya had told her that Naruto had met with the clan head and his wife during the month. Naruto didn't tell her what was discussed, just that he had another promise to keep when it came time for fighting Neji. Kurenai broke from her thoughts as Naruto cracked his knuckles audibly as he looked at Neji with eyes cold enough that it wouldn't be surprising if Naruto could cry ice. Now Neji, I believe I owe you an untold amount of pain, Naruto stated as he looked at his opponent that would soon be his victim. Please, fate has already declared. Neji's rant was stopped as he felt a stinging pain on his cheek. Feeling it, he found he was bleeding from a cut to his cheek and he finally saw, thanks to his Byakugan, that there was a kunai embedded in the wall behind him. He also took note of Naruto's hand being out towards him as if he threw something. There's that arrogance and cowardice again. I'll inform you now that I intend to beat you in taijutsu, but since I despise the stink you release every time you talk, I'm going to inflict other forms of pain on you every time that stink arises. Naruto stated as he lowered his hand and began walking towards Neji without a care in the world. Neji glared as he was getting tired of Naruto running his mouth and charged at Naruto with a palm strike. However, all he hit was air as Naruto spun around his arm and then drove his elbow into Neji's neck, while Neji also felt the ball-bearing slam into his back, sending him tumbling forward from the force of the hit being added to his own rush. Neji stopped himself after a few feet and looked to see Naruto merely standing there still staring at him with the cold blue eyes. Neji was starting to despise that look especially as it reminded him of how some of the main branch looked at him. As if nothing he did mattered, as if he was a lowly insect and they were an almighty being. It was infuriating. Neji stood up and charged right at Naruto only for him to sidestep and stick his leg out to trip Neji, causing the Hyuga prodigy to fall face first into the dirt. Naruto merely stood there still looking at him as Neji got up and wiped the dirt from his face. Or rather, he tried to get up as once he got to his hands and knees, Naruto kicked him right in the sending him back into the dirt. Get up. Come on, get up. You're the great Hyuga prodigy, so get the up. Naruto stated before walking around and punting Neji in the ribs, sending him skidding away. I said get up. Naruto stated with coldness in his voice, surprising the few who had interacted with him as the coldness was the exact opposite of how Naruto usually was. Naruto then walked around Neji, who was coughing and holding his ribs, while still gazing at the Hyuga. The crowd couldn't help but match the scene to that of a predator circling its prey. You know, Neji, for the entire month I've had really nothing to think about other than the various ways I wanted to maim, beat, and kill you. Naruto stated as he walked while a few tensed at the last mention, but you see, I have a bit of a problem due to the fact I made a couple of promises that in some ways conflict with each other. Naruto stated before booting Neji in the ribs again, sending him back to the ground gasping for air. You see, I swore on Hinata's blood that I would kick your. I also promised someone that was feeling pretty wrathful towards you that I would make you suffer. Yet still on top of that I also swore to your aunt and uncle that I wouldn't kill or cripple you. This was compounded on the fact that Hinata wouldn't be happy with me killing you, and while we aren't close I do consider her my friend. Naruto stated, making said girl blush. Naturally this left me in quite the predicament since I needed a way to fulfill all three promises without violating any of them, which is where some research I conducted comes in. Naruto stated before kicking Neji in the face, knocking a few teeth out. So please, do get up since I need to vent some aggression and keep my word. Naruto stated, stopping in front of Neji as he got up. Neji wiped the blood and dirt from his mouth before glaring at Naruto. You think you know everything. You know nothing of the Hyuga clan. I lost, Neji stated angrily before getting cut off. Yeah, you lost your father because he died to prevent a war with Kuma when they tried to kidnap Hinata. Naruto stated in a mocking tone, get over yourself. Hinata was 3, and you expected her to be able to do something against a seasoned Jonin. You're even more delusional than I thought you were. If you should be mad at someone, then it should be the ambassador or Hiyashi-sama, not Hinata. Naruto stated neutrally, you preach about fate being absolute, but the fact is you're the biggest hypocrite there is. Naruto stated, making Neji scowl. You go on and on about your destiny, fate, and all that, but your destiny is to serve and protect Hinata, and what do? You attack her, beat her, put her down, and nearly kill her when the moment she was your opponent you should have surrendered knowing you were to never strike her. Thus, you're a lying hypocritical sack of shit. Naruto stated, making Neji grit his teeth in anger. Neji then launched at him with a palm thrust that Naruto deflected before catching the arm under his own and delivered 3 brutal punches to Neji's gut before giving a punch to the face and then a backhand to the face. Naruto then grabbed him by his robes and slammed his head into Neji's face a few times, ensuring his forehead protector made contact with Neji's nose, causing it to break. Naruto then lifted him off the ground before slamming him back first into the dirt and then kicked him away. Rolling his shoulders, Naruto merely stood there as Neji tried to get up. You see, Neji, I know what makes you tick. You claim fate controls everything not because you believe it, but because it's your excuse. You use fate as a crutch. Naruto stated as he walked towards Neji before kicking in the face, causing him to roll over. You use it to justify anything you do that would normally get you in trouble and to give cause to vent your anger. You knew fully well that you couldn't beat Hinata if both of you were serious about winning. All she'd have to do is activate that pretty seal on your forehead and you would have lost instantly. So what do? You tear down her confidence, you break her spirit, you twist and manipulate her feelings towards family to ensure she can't possibly fight at her best. I saw it when Lee was fighting Gaara. You were angry and scared at what you saw because Lee's skills were something you thought a dead last could never achieve. Seeing him not only surpass his handicap, but show that he was clearly a threat terrified you to the core because he was going to ruin your belief and excuse structure that you had painstakingly built for years. Naruto stated, shocking Neji's team. The crowd though was stunned at how analytical Naruto was being as he planted his foot on Neji's chest. You see Neji, I know how to set you off. I know how to make you angry. I know how to make you lash out. I know what makes you think, what makes you react, and I know how to tear you apart. Naruto stated, stomping hard onto his chest, making him gasp and cough up some blood. Naruto merely snorted at him before moving away, and Neji grit his teeth and quickly got to his feet before launching out a palm strike to Naruto's spine. However, all he hit was air as Naruto sidestepped him and grabbed his wrist tightly. Naruto then brought his knee up right into Neji's elbow, shattering it and making him scream in pain. Naruto then twisted around, pulling Neji into a chokehold. Neji grit his teeth and clawed at Naruto's arm as he fought to breathe. See this, Neji? This is what happens when a snake swallows its own tail. Just keep fighting, Neji, fight. Naruto stated as Neji tried to kick his legs out to get some kind of traction. That's what the rage is like, it just eats away at you when you've got nothing to believe in, when you have nothing to fight for. And that is why I will always win. Naruto stated as Neji sank to his knees as his body was shutting down unnecessary functions to conserve oxygen. Do you feel that need for air right now, Neji? Naruto asked casually as he kept the hold on Neji's throat and was making it tighter. You see, it's not your lungs that are screaming at you for air, it's your brain. That microscopic organism, walnut on a stick, dumber than shit thing you call a brain. Your brain knows it can't panic further by flaring that it needs air, so it makes your lungs scream for air instead. Naruto stated calmly as he kept strangling Neji. I bet I sound very far away now, don't I? Naruto asked before he frowned and then grabbed Neji's head tight before snapping his neck. Up in the stands, those that had no hand in training Naruto could only watch in stunned awe as he dismantled Neji like he was an academy student fighting a seasoned Anbu. The dead last of the last academy graduation, tearing the former rookie of the year apart like he was nothing. For the other genin, it was shocking to see the drastic change in Naruto's skill level, ferocity, and how willing he was to hurt his opponent. The loudmouth that only barely defeated Kiba was tearing Neji, the rookie of the year and Hyuga prodigy, apart like he was nothing. Such a massive spike in skill and change in personality in only 1 month was baffling to them all. For Gaara though, it was making his bloodlust spike. The power, strength, bloodlust, rage, and brutality being shown were making him react even more than Sasuke ever had. The underlying power hidden underneath combined with a threat that Naruto made was making him react even stronger. 2 weeks into training, Naruto had gone to visit his friends in the hospital and found Gaara there trying to kill Lee and finish the job. Only Gaara found a blade right at his throat and his liver with Naruto there holding them. Naruto had warned him against doing such a thing, especially since all his precious sand was over next to Lee. When Gaara had stated he wouldn't be denied confirming his existence, Naruto called him a fool. Why kill Lee in a secluded room where no one would know it was him that did it? Why get a morsel when he could wait for the finals and kill multiple people for hundreds to see? Who would be able to deny his existence when they saw him crush and destroy opponents with such brutality and bloodlust? In short, why have a simple dumpling when you could have an all-you-can-eat buffet? Naturally, Gaara accepted the logic and warned Naruto that should he interfere again that he would die painfully. Naruto's reply had only spiked Gaara's bloodlust. Oh, don't worry, Gaara, we'll fight soon enough and then you're going to know fear, pain, and loss as I tear you apart and show you why your demon is nothing compared to mine. Those had been Naruto's words, and it was only further punctuated by him using a sliver of Kyuubi's power to turn his eyes blood red and slit the pupil. Gaara knew right then that Naruto was like him, and the fact his demon was a higher number just meant he was even more worth killing. And now, his most recent actions were only heightening his bloodlust. When Gaara saw him kill Neji, his blood boiled at the prospect of fighting a fellow Jinchuriki that was willing to kill. Naturally, everyone else watching was shocked at Naruto killing Neji, especially when he had stated that he promised not to kill him and was going to fulfill the promise. Now though, they couldn't help but wonder why he lied. Kurenai was biting her lips since she appreciated Naruto dishing out so much punishment, and part of her was glad that Naruto killed Neji, but the look of horror and pain on Hinata's face was killing her. She knew Naruto never broke a promise, so why did he kill Neji after promising not to? Sakura, Ino, and Tenten were horrified at the sight of Naruto killing an opponent, let alone killing a fellow Leaf Shinobi. What could have happened the past month to cause such a shift in his personality and fighting? Guy, however, was merely looking at the arena floor with an unreadable expression while Lee was horrified at the death of his teammate. Calm down, Lee, Hinata, Tenten. It's not over yet, Guy stated seriously, since he knew Naruto would have only done that if he had something planned. But Guy-sensei, Naruto just killed Neji, Tenten stated angrily, and Guy merely gave her a serious stare that immediately shut her up. I know what we saw, but we haven't seen the end of this match yet. Guy stated seriously, making everyone look at him. Naruto never breaks his word, and the fact he did that means something else must be going on. Guy stated, turning back to the field. You mean whatever that bubble is? Asuma stated, making them look at him as Guy nodded. Yes, Naruto ensured that the very first thing he did was create that bubble. He must have had a reason to do it and we've yet to see what that was. Guy stated, making them turn back to look at the field while Hinata was hoping that they were correct. Hiyashi was the only one impassive in the stands even as his wife comforted their youngest. While it was easy to believe Naruto had lied to him and wasn't ever going to spare Neji, it just didn't fit with the boy he had observed and gotten reports about. The boy prided himself on never going back on his word, which in some cases was a fault of his that people could take advantage of, but Hiyashi knew the boy didn't care and gave his word that Neji would survive the finals. Knowing how unpredictable Naruto was, Hiyashi could only assume it had to do with that bubble that was there since Naruto made it a point to activate it before the fight truly started. Turning to his youngest, he patted her head gently. Calm yourself, Hanabi, I truly believe Neji will be alive before this is over. Hiyashi stated, drawing his wife and daughter's attention. But father, Neji Nisan is, Hanabi started before Hiyashi patted her head again. I know what we are seeing, Hanabi, but you must learn to never take what you see as fact. We have yet to see what that bubble Naruto created even does, thus we don't know if what we are seeing is truly what the final outcome is. Hiyashi stated, knowing a ninja could never take anything at face value or they risk losing their life. Hiyashi then turned his attention back to the field as Hanabi worked to calm herself and looked to the field along with her mother. Back on the field, Naruto looked at Neji's body with indifference before he moved back to his starting spot and snapped his fingers, causing a pulse from the bubble to retract. Everyone watched as Neji's body disappeared as the ring crossed over it and, once the ring full closed and hit Naruto, Neji's body reappeared. However, the shocking thing was that he sat up and started coughing and gasping for air. Holy shit, what the hell is this? Were the various thoughts of the viewers including Hiruzen and Orochimaru as they were witnessing a dead man being alive again. Naruto merely looked at Neji as he kept coughing and rubbing his throat as he gulped down air. Ready for round 2, Neji? Naruto asked in a bored tone as Neji looked at him in confusion. What was that? I felt the pain and death, but here I am. Neji stated as he and the viewers noticed his arm wasn't broken and neither was his nose. The bubble. I'd explain the intricacies, mechanics, and subtleties of it, but there are foreign shinobi here as well as people I still have to fight after I crush you, so I don't feel like giving away the secrets to my first original jutsu. Naruto stated, surprising everyone that he had created the jutsu, so let me simplify your situation for you. So long as this bubble is up, I can reset you, me, and the field back to how we were when the bubble first went up. What this means, is that I can break you, cut you, beat you, amputate, and kill you over and over again and bring you right back to life with a snap of my fingers. The benefit, is that your body will still feel and remember the pain even after you're restored, meaning that you're going to feel every wound, every punch, every death like it was really happening and then remember what it feels like. The only way out for you is to surrender, to just keep fighting and I'll keep killing until I get bored and take the bubble down, or you manage to kill me and the bubble will come down and then I'll be back once it does. Naruto stated, surprising people since the jutsu appeared to be very powerful and those aware of his promises now fully understood why he said that he would keep all of his promises even though he killed Neji. That's not possible, no jutsu can do such a thing. Neji stated, gritting his as he tried to ignore the phantom pains in his nose, ribs, arm, and throat. There was also no jutsu that could let you teleport, but the fourth made one. There was no jutsu that could control trees, but the first Hokage had them. There was a point in time where there was no such thing as jutsu at all, yet here we are. All you really need is an idea, the inner workings of hand seals and chakra, and plenty of time to do trial and error. Thus this came to be, and thus you are in for more pain than you've ever felt in your life. Naruto stated, popping his neck and knuckles as he began walking towards Neji and then stopped a short ways from him. Since I'm feeling nice, I'll let you give the first strike. Naruto stated with confidence in his voice. Neji grit his teeth before smirking as Naruto got closer and got into a stance that made every Hyuga there widen their eyes. Gentle fist art, 8 trigrams 64 palms. Neji stated before he launched at Naruto and hit him twice while Naruto just stood there with a bored expression. 2 palms. 4 palms. 8 palms. 16 palms. 32 palms. 64 palms. Neji shouted as he doubled the strikes each time before doing a chakra-infused palm strike to Naruto that sent him skidding back. Naruto merely stood there with his head down while Hinata was worried for him as were several others, with the only one being calm was Guy. Training him in one of the taijutsu arts involved Naruto taking a great deal of pain and punishment to his body, so he knew that attack, while strong, was nothing to Naruto. This proved true as Naruto stood straight and rolled his shoulders, shocking Neji and several Hyuga. Well, that felt nice. Maybe next time I can have you aim for my neck, I've had this bad crick there for a few days and could use some loosening up. Naruto stated, standing there not at all bothered by the hits he took. I am possible, Neji stated in shock, since no one should be able to just shrug off an attack like that. Hardly. The problem with sealing off chakra points is the fact that against someone with enough chakra, it's useless since I can just force my chakra points back open with a mass wave of chakra through my system. And really, With your chakra being forced away because of my chakra, those little finger pokes do absolutely no damage to me. Though I will give you props for that palm strike, it actually tickled. Naruto stated since his body was just a wall of solid muscle and with chakra being regulated through him to harden the muscles, it just meant that any hits were not going to reach his organs. Neji's chakra attacks did hit his chakra points, but they didn't go any further than that. Neji grit his teeth in rage before he launched at Naruto, unleashing a barrage of attacks as he did. Unfortunately for him, Naruto had known how he would react and was ready for him. Naruto quickly deflected the blows with ease, making the blows miss him by a mile. Naruto kept this up for a few moments before he turned sideways and began to deflect the attacks with one arm. Finally, he pushed him away with a bored look on his face. Come on, stop trying to hit me and hit me. Naruto stated, making Neji grit his teeth and attack again. This time Naruto just leaned back and stepped back, dodging before he brought his elbow up, knocking one of Neji's strikes away and throwing him off balance. Naruto then brought his hand to Neji's midsection and did a 1-inch punch directly into his right kidney, making him gasp in pain. Naruto then followed it up with one more 1-inch punch to the same kidney, dropping Neji to his knees as he was clutching his side. He was then sent back as Naruto Spartan kicked Neji right in the face, breaking his nose again. Naruto stood there and shook his head. Seriously? This is it? This is the famed and proud prodigy of the Hyuga clan. I'm starting to feel insulted for having my expectations raised so high and I only get this farce. Naruto stated as Neji glared and cradled his side as he tried to stand up. Up above, Hiruzen sat impassively, though inside he was impressed and proud of how far Naruto had come and was showing his skill. The brutality he understood, since Naruto had made it clear from an early age that he'd harm anyone that dared to hurt someone he counted as a precious person. He also understood the hidden second reason for his beating of Neji. The longer he took, the longer his clones and their forces had to ensure everything was secure and ready for Orochimaru and the Sans forces, and the longer Orochimaru had to put off on launching said invasion. He knew his former student well. His plans being delayed and put on hold for Kami knows how long would irritate and anger him, which would begin making him sloppier and thus make it easier to kill him. So all in all, while vicious and brutal, Hiruzen wasn't going to stop the fight. Back to Naruto, he began to calmly walk towards Neji, who was still shaky since the blows to his kidney were slowing him. However, that didn't stop him from trying to lash out with a palm strike, but Naruto merely sidestepped it and slammed his hand into Neji's throat, crushing it. Neji dropped to his knees, choking and gagging as he tried to breathe, but it was futile as his body started shutting down and he dropped to the ground dead. Naruto merely looked at Neji a minute before deciding it was enough and snapped his fingers, making the bubble come down entirely. Naturally, Neji appeared again, grasping his throat and coughing before he was sent flying into a tree via a kick from Naruto. The force was evident as the bark of the tree exploded when Neji collided with it before Naruto was in front of him, raining blow after blow on him as he used him like one of his training dummies. Elbow to the face, kick to the knee, followed by grabbing his shoulder and picking him back up. Chop to the side of the neck. Multiple palm strikes to the torso and arms. Swipe to the face followed by a backhand. Punches barraging his torso and face. Knee to the gut, elbow to the head, hip check back into the tree, followed by another barrage, but this was chops and finger jabs. And all of this cycled again and again in less than a minute as Naruto and Neji were slowly covered in the blood leaking and splattering from Neji's mouth and nose. Then Naruto stopped and held Neji by his throat before lifting him off the ground as Neji just dangled there. His body too sore and battered to even try to resist. I want you to remember this moment, Neji Hyuga. This was the moment that insignificant spark you call a life could have been snuffed out for good. And it's not fate that shows you mercy, it's not the Hokage, not your sensei, not your clan, family, or teammates. You are only alive right now, because I promise not to end your life. A promise, Neji, a whim, a mere exchange of words, that is all that stands between you and meeting the Shinigami face to face. Remember this moment, for it is the moment a failure who couldn't complete the graduation exam 3 times defeated you, with you being able to do nothing against him. A prodigy losing to an orphan who never had anyone train or educate him truly until a month ago. Naruto stated, making Neji and others widen their eyes in surprise. Fate, if it even exists, will always side with the person who wants it more. Your father's fate was of his own making. He loved his brother and would never allow him to die for protecting his child. Your father chose to leave this world on his own terms, and you disgrace him and his memory by using it as a means to harm and hate. Naruto stated as Neji, for the first time in years, let tears leave his eyes. You can still change and be a man worthy of you, father, but I warn you, should you ever commit such an act again, then I will look for you, I will find you, and I will kill you. And nothing, not your clan, your team, the Hokage, the Fire Daimyo, nor even Kami himself will stand in my way. That is my promise to you, Neji. Nowhere on this world or in the next will you be able to hide from me. Do you understand? Naruto informed, threatened, and then asked as Neji mutely and weakly nodded before Naruto tossed him to the center of the arena. You can call it, he's done. Naruto stated as he walked for the stairwell. Winner. Naruto Uzumaki. Genma called as the medics came to retrieve Neji, and the people that taught Naruto over the month were the first to start applauding. They were soon joined by others throughout the stadium, with some cheers echoing out too. Hiyashi then kissed his wife's and Hanabi's heads before standing to go and speak to Neji, since it was time he learned the truth. Hanabi though was still stuck on just watching Naruto until he disappeared into the hallway leading to the stairs, and Hitomi was the same. The other genin were just frozen in stunned awe and shock at seeing Naruto break Neji down completely and utterly. Hinata was mainly just grateful Naruto hadn't truly killed Neji, though she was blushing since he had technically done all of that for her, even if it was because he didn't like Neji's action. It showed that he did indeed care. Kurenai meanwhile was smiling and blushing since she knew what Naruto's victory meant, and she wasn't opposed to it since she had spent the last month getting to know him while training. While she would hope for a more romantic relationship, this one with Naruto wasn't going to be bad. It didn't hurt that Kin had told her about his tongue, hands, and either, so she knew there was something to look forward to. She broke from her thoughts as Anko leaned in towards her ear. "Guess he owns you now," Anko stated with a whisper and smirk, making Kurenai blush a bit more since Anko had heard her and Naruto talking about it one day and had been teasing them since. Kurenai though smiled and whispered back, "Yes, he does, but don't be jealous, I'm sure he'll you too." Kurenai stated, making Anko, "Yes badass bitch Anko," blush before she looked away, making Kurenai giggle softly. "Naruto just keeps getting stronger and stronger, while I don't think I've improved at all since we became a team." Sakura thought, both impressed with Naruto and saddened for herself. Though she was happy for Naruto and that he got to show off what he could do. With said blonde, he walked up the contestant participant area wearing his vest, coat, and bracers again, though Tamari had to resist pouting at not seeing his muscles anymore, and leaned against the railing, not even acknowledging the others, while Gaara was staring at him in bloodlust. It didn't help that he still had the blood splatter on his shirt. Naruto knew he was, of course. He Tenant was grinning and telling him that Shukaku was no doubt howling for Gaara to kill Naruto after learning Kyuubi was inside him. Naruto and Kyuubi had actually come to a bit of agreeable terms since Naruto was becoming serious and stronger, which suited Kyuubi, since if he had to be sealed in someone, they had better be one of, if not the biggest badass there is. Anything else was insulting to Kyuubi. Essentially it was, "I'm the strongest Biju, so you had better become the strongest shinobi there is, or else." Of course, neither of them were delusional to believe Naruto could handle anything coming at him on his own right now. He was strong and skilled, but had no real combat or life experience and wasn't anywhere near his peak capabilities yet. Then add in the likes of Orochimaru running around, Naruto would need Kyuubi's help to survive those types of encounters without going into a berserker rage. Thus Kyuubi would give him access to as much chakra as he could handle before going berserk, and Naruto would be on his own in any other situation. Naruto had also read up on mindscapes and altered his from the sewer. It was to better accommodate Kyuubi, and for the fact he didn't like the idea of his mind being a sewer of all things. Kyuubi had played it off, but Naruto could tell he was appreciative for the scene change, since it was a forest and mountainous area now, which let Kyuubi have room to move. Kyuubi's only complaint was that the seal had taken the shape of a collar around him, which he didn't like since it almost signified him as a tamed pet rather than a fearsome Biju. Still, it was a minor thing when compared to being out of the sewer, cage, and water and able to move easily. Naruto broke from his inner musings and remembrances as Genma called for the next match. "Will Sasuke Uchiha and Gaara Subaku come down?" Genma called getting Gaara to come down, but there was no sign of Sasuke. Genma frowned at this. "Sasuke Uchiha, come down." Genma called again and still nothing, causing Genma to look up to the Hokage. Hiruzen sighed and leaned over to his subordinate and whispered before said man nodded and went down to Genma and spoke to him. Genma nodded with a sigh. "All right, as is customary here in the Leaf, the match between Gaara and Sasuke will be postponed until the other matches have taken place. If by that time Sasuke Uchiha is not here, he will be counted as a forfeit, no exceptions." Genma called, making many nobles and others murmur and grumble since they wanted to see the last loyal male Uchiha fight. "Yes, you read correctly, there is a female Uchiha still alive and loyal to the village." Said female was Sasuke and Itachi's mother Makoto. Said woman had only barely survived the massacre, and the village higher-ups never dared to try and touch her since she knew why Itachi had done what he did, and both she and Fugaku were proud of him protecting the village above all. The only reason she was alive is because she had a rare condition called situs inversus, which meant all of her organs were on the opposite side of a normal person's. As a result, she had dextrocardia, which was another disorder, which could take place without situs inversus, that makes the heart point to the right side of the body instead of the left. Thus when Itachi intended to give her a swift death of a straight shot to the heart with his sword, he missed and only hit empty body cavity. Makoto had awoken and stumbled out of her home where the Hokage and Anbu found her and took her to the hospital before she and the Hokage had a private chat with the old man expressing his sorrow, since if he had known it was only the Uchiha elders stirring up trouble, he would have only executed them and not the entire clan. Makoto has understood and warned Hiruzen that someone else had helped Itachi kill her clan, since Itachi, while giving the appearance of cold and calculating, couldn't have had it in him to slay multiple children ranging from infants to teens. This was confirmed my autopsies since the wounds on some of the bodies were different from the others, meaning someone else was there that night killing Uchihas with Itachi. Naturally, that didn't bode well for them since Itachi doing it was one thing, but someone sneaking in and killing the clan members without leaving any real trace was something else entirely. Anyway, after seeing Sasuke in a tearful meeting and a few months of rehab for her arm and shoulder, Makoto worked to get back into shape since she didn't need to become helpless with the other villages, no doubt seeing an opportunity to steal a breeder for Uchiha soldiers now that the clan was down to a lonely couple. She had let her training and exercise get too slack in becoming a housewife when she used to be Anbu material, and now she was going to fix that. Sasuke was only too happy to join her in training since his mother was Anbu material and had helped Itachi with his training, so her helping him would help close the gap faster than training on his own. Makoto had only been partially successful in pushing Sasuke away from revenge since there had to be a reason for Itachi killing everyone including civilian members, because Itachi could have killed the Anbu of the village if he wanted to test his prowess. Sasuke had understood the reasoning, but couldn't promise he'd not try to get revenge because the hatred was there and wouldn't be going away. So now here she was sitting in the stands with a frown since she had heard about her son's run-in with Orochimaru and the subsequent curse marking. Naturally, she had demanded he be given protection and the highest grade seal that could be used to contain it since Sasuke was still young and in a moment of anger could draw on the curse seal and succumb to the effects of Orochimaru's influence. Thus Jiraiya and Naruto, both for his own learning and any potential and wild ideas he had, were to look at it after the finals since Kakashi and Sasuke had gone into seclusion for training, so there was no chance of spying or ambushing. She broke from her musings as she turned her eyes towards Naruto. She wasn't a fool, she knew who his parents were since you'd need to be half blind, not paying attention, or just very stupid not to see the similarities and resemblance.